Hi, welcome to all of you. This is the third part of the beer manufacturing process. In this video discussion, you learn the manufacturing processing steps in the brewing and the processing parameters which are involving in the beer manufacturing process. Basically, in this video discussion, you learn what is meant by mashing process, what are the changes in the brew kettle boiling process, fermentation process, and the post brewing processing steps. These are the all parameters are detailed discussed in this video discussion. Let's start one by one. Friends, in the first part of the brewing process, we detailed discussed on the what are the raw material and their main role in the brewing process. And in the second part, we detailed discussed on the how malting process is carried out, how the barley malt is produced. In this third part, main management process of the brewing, what are the main steps which are the involving in the brewing management process? You can see in the simple flow sheets how the uh, malted barley is converted into the beer, in which first whatever the barley grains, this barley grains is malting process is carried out. We detail discussed it in second video discussion of the brewing process. Then after that, that malted barley, dried malted barley is converted into the milling process. The main steps which are involving in the brewing process, that is the first one, the barley is converted to the malt, barley malt, that is the malting process. We detail discuss it in second part. Then after that, the milling process to convert into the coarse flour milling by maybe using the hammer mills and by using the roller mills. Then addition of the other ingredients in which involving addition of the water adjuvants, then addition of the hops, then mashing process in which enzymatic conversion process we detail discuss in the next point. Then fermentation process by addition of the yeast, and that after that the fermentation we get the beer which is required to properly post processing treatment and finally packaging treatments. These are the main steps involving in the beer manufacturing process, in which the main steps, that is the malting process, then the mashing process, brew kettle boiling process, fermentation process, then clarification and the carbonation process. Then after that packaging and the pasteurization. These are the main steps involving in the brewing process. You can see in this flow sheet, that is the brewing processing flow sheet, the detailed manufacturing process, in which the first the main raw material, that is the malted barley grains, and second one is the main raw material, that is the other cereal grain dry adjuncts as a source of the starch, in which they are both separately processing is carried out. That is the malted barley, dried malted barley is first they are passed into the milling process. The first converted into the coarse flour by the malted barley is converted into the flours. Separately the milling process is carried out. Then the dry adjuncts, whatever the other grains like the rice, corn, and other grains which containing higher percent of the starch, which is must required to properly size reduction process and separately cooking. That is the gelatinization of the starch is carried out by addition of the water and cooking by using the steam jacketed kettles for 1 to 2 hours. And after that, malted barley and the dry adjuncts they are both mixed and properly mashing process is carried out. The mashing process, this is the main process involving the beer manufacturing process, in which whatever the this milled malted barley or whatever the added of the this starch other grains, it's containing complex substances which are again converted by the addition of the microbial enzymes or by maybe whatever the natural enzymes which is present in the malted barley grains. This enzyme is activated and enzymatic hydrolysis is carried out in the mashing process. Basically, mashing process involving by controlling the proper temperature in this process required 50 to 60 degrees Celsius for 1 to 2 hours, in which enzymatic hydrolysis is carried out. Insoluble substances which are the present in the mash, which is converted into the soluble slightly hydrolysis by the enzymatic process. The next, that is the separation of the whatever the remaining spent grains, which is the separated in the separating tub. It is also called as a latter tub or also called as a separation of the wort process. That means these grains containing soluble constituents which are the extracted in the mashing process, and after that they are separated, which is the extracted liquid media used for the brewing process, and remaining insoluble solids which are the that is the spent grains which is the waste in the brewing process. After the extracted malt which is charged into the next brew kettle boiling process. In this brew kettle boiling process, which is also similar to the mashing, that is the steam jacket cooking vessels, in which addition of the hops and maybe added with the, as per our requirement, addition of the liquid adjuvants, that means the sugar syrup which is added in the brew kettle boiling process. After that brew kettle boiling process, the next one is the filtration and the clarification process, passing into the plate and fan filters, then cooling process by passing into the heat exchangers, then aeration, addition of the air into the what, that is the whatever the media that added externally oxygen in order to increasing the rate of the fermentation process. Then after that the next fermentation process by addition of the starter culture yeast as per the specific type of the beer, then proper time temperature combinations in which the fermentation is process carried out. The next one is the filtration, then cooling process, and after that maturation under the same tank in which the chilling tanks maturation is carried out for 1 to 2 weeks. After that the carbonation in which the automatic system in which the by using the pressurized carbonation process is carried out, and after that the packaging, and after that packaging into the glass bottles, pasteurization is compulsory in the brewing process. The next labeling and the secondary packaging systems. These are the main steps which are the involving in the beer manufacturing process. You can see how the malted barley grains is first converted to the dry, that means the passing into the milling process, converted to the coarse milled flour, which is then mashing process is carried out, then extract. This extracted is separated, then extract is in brew kettle boiling properly cooked to sterilization carried out, and after that the fermentation process and the next post processing process is carried out, and finally we get the beer. The first step in the brewing process, that is the milling process, malted barley grains is milling is carried out. The malted barley grains or other dry adjuncts. The milling process involving in which may be using the dry milling process or by using the wet milling process. Basically in the brewing industry, the milling is carried out by using the roller type of the mill or by using the hammer mill or disc mill, in which the cereal grain is milled into the coarse or maybe into the flakes or into the sizely coarse flooring system. The basic purpose is that the cereal grain containing whatever the soluble constituents which are the properly extract during the mashing process, the natural enzymes which are the present in the grain must require to stable or retain during the processing temperature and the pressure conditions. The second important step, that is the adjuncts cooker. Adjuncts cooker, that means the cereal grains other than the malted barley grains which does not go into the malting process must require to properly hydrolyze to convert insoluble constituent into the soluble constituents by addition of the 10% of the malt grits as a source of the natural enzymes during the adjuncts cooking process. You can see in this process the cereal grains, that is the other cereal grains added with the malt grits 10%, then addition of the 3 times of the water, then cooking into the steam jacketed kettle for 1 to 2 hours, in which natural enzymes which are the converted into the soluble substances into the soluble substances, that means hydrolysis of the starch and the proteins in small quantity, and after that it is easy to extract the next third important step, that is the mashing process in the brewing, involving three main stages in the mashing process. Mashing, that means the controlled enzymatic natural hydrolysis process in which the maybe the natural enzymes which are present in the malted barley grains which are activated and hydrolysis process is carried out. In some of the industry, external microbial enzymes may be added to the mashing process, in which the milled malted barley grains added with the water and then continuously cooking for 1 to 1.5 hours at the temperature of 55 to 60 degrees Celsius, in which the recirculation of the extracted wort is carried out. That means maximum recirculation and extraction of the soluble component from the milled malted barley grains is carried out, in which the steps involving, that is the first stage, that is the grits added water and heated to 35 to 50 degrees Celsius to gelatinize the barley starch. Then second stage, addition of the dry adjacent cooked starch, which is the temperature is higher, that is about up to 100 degrees Celsius, which is added into the malted barley grains. Then finally temperature of that mixture is increased or raised up to the 55 to 65 degrees Celsius, which is the sufficient for the enzymes activation process in the mashing process, like the amylase, protease enzymes, which are the activated and hydrolysis is carried out. Some of the industry microbial enzymes, which are the directly added for in order to increasing the maximum extraction of the soluble component in order to get the more fermentable final product. The next step, that is the after the mashing process, it is called as a wort separation. That means the soluble substances which is the separated from the spent grain, in which the same tank of that mashing tank, the in which the wort separation is carried out. At the bottom of this tank provided with the perforated sieve systems, and at the top there should be the provision of the agitators, which are the continuously rotated into the inside of that mashing stage. You can see there should be the provision of the recirculation system, then separation system, then separation of the spent grain, then separation of the whatever the extracted soluble component, that is the wort separation process. You can see basically in the latter term process, separation of the wort from the extract. This extracted is the main raw material in the brewing process. The basic principle involving in the latter term, that is the central rotating arms with the providing vertical knives that are the used as a appropriate to slice through the grain bed and facilitate runoff. The next one is the brew kettle boiling process. In this brew kettle boiling process, the wort which is cooked for 1 to 2 hours in a steam jacketed kettles. The main purpose of the brew kettle boiling process involving number of the basic principles. During the brew kettle boiling process, in the wort added with the hops flour extract or directly hops flour powder. The basic objectives involving first sterilization of the sterilization of the main wort. Then second one is the enzymes inactivations, reduce the microbial and the enzymatic activity. Then hope extraction during the cooking process. Then the protein precipitation, that is the trough suspended particles and the protein particles, which are the sedimentation occurs, and they are separated in the trough separation process. That means the protein precipitated along with the tannins and the other materials. Then development of the color and the flavors and slightly concentration of the wort. Then after the brew kettle boiling process, the wort is next transferred to the cooling and then chilling process and aeration process. The brew kettle boiling process may be added with the sugar syrup, that is the liquid adjuncts which are the added during the brew kettle boiling process. Basically purpose is that to maintain the sugar initial level of the wort in order to get the maximum fermentable alcohol in the final product. The next after the brew kettle boiling process, that is the next trough separation and the wort cooling process. Trough separation, that means the whatever the precipitate particles of the worts, it's containing protein particles. These protein particles which are separated before they pass into the fermentation process. The wort they pass first into the heat exchanger, that is the chilling heat exchangers to chill, and after that the protein particles and the other sediment particles. The separation is carried out by using the centrifugal clarification process or maybe using the filtration process to separate the drop particles, and the clarified, cooled or the chilled wort then aerated and passed into the fermentation process. The next step, that is the alcoholic fermentation of the beer. After the chilling and aerated wort is filled into the fermenter. In this fermentation process, closed anaerobic fermenter in which wort added with the yeast culture specific in the production process as per their types. Yeast culture is added, that is the maybe added Saccharomyces cerevisiae or maybe added Saccharomyces carbogenesis. After the addition of the yeast, start the fermentation process. You can see in this picture, this is the specific yeast cells in which glucose is absorbed in the cell and start the glycolysis process to convert glucose into the 2-pyruvate, and after that under the anaerobic conditions 2-pyruvate which is then converted to the 2 molecules of the ethyl alcohol and the 2 molecules of the carbon dioxides, and whatever the carbon dioxide and alcohol which is produced in these cells which is released from these cells into the media. You can see in this graphical representation with respect to the change of parameters with respect to the time, in which sugar percentage, initial sugar percentage which is the reduce with respect to the time, then pH also slightly reduce, alcohol percentage increases with respect to the time, and specific depending on the sugar containing. Microbial cell populations, the microbial cell populations are also increased with respect to this time with the specific time limit, and after that start to the decline or the declination of the death phase, then population is reduces. These are the parameters. In the production process parameters, the time temperature combination for the lager and ale beer, you can see in this, these are the time temperature combinations. After the fermentation process, next step, that is the maturation or aging or the conditioning process, and then the filtration process. In the industry level, after the fermentation process, the beer is loaded into the stainless steel chilled tank, that is the chilling tank with provided external jacket system, or maybe using the oak barrels for the aging or the maturation process. Mostly brewing industry, the aging is carried out by using the stainless steel tanks, and aging period for only 1 to 2 weeks as per the specific types they varies. In the aging process, the natural sedimentation process is carried out, and after the aging process, the filtration process is carried out by using the plate and film filtration system to remove the suspended or the solid particles, remove whatever the remaining undissolving substances from the beer, and finally we get the clarified beer. After the clarification of the beer, next one is the carbonation process, in which may be natural carbonation or by external carbonation. Natural means that means whatever the internal carbon dioxide which is the generated by the yeast activity which is retained in the brewing process, and external, that means addition of the external carbon dioxide gas under the pressure, that the carbonation is carried out by using the mechanical system. Mostly industry level carbonation is carried out by the external carbonation systems in the range of 2.5 to 3 volume of carbon dioxide. Next last step, that is the packaging system of the brewing. Packaging is carried out maybe into the glass bottles, maybe aluminum cans, and maybe into the stainless steel cages. In the glass bottle systems involving main step, that is the glass bottle first washing system, loading, then washing. The next one is the cleaning by using the hot water, caustic soda, detergents, or the rinsing with the water. That means properly cleaning system. Then the filling of the beer into the bottles under pressure. Then bottle sealing process. Then bottles pass into the tunnel pasteurization system to then after that labeling and the secondary packaging systems. Similarly, in the can system, same process is carried out. In the stainless steel case system, the packaging of the beer into the large quantity, mostly in this beer is not pasteurized or maybe pasteurized by using passing into the heat exchangers, and after that they are packed into the stainless steel cage, which is the supply into the large hotels or the into the maybe restaurants. In the brewing industry, the main waste involving first one is the spent grain. You can see after the mashing process, this then after that separation of the spent grain, these are the remaining insoluble constituents which are the separated. These are the dried and used or maybe mostly used for the as a cattle feeding and the poultry feeding system or as a fertilizers. Then second one is the wastewater. Large quantity of the water is required in the brewing industry. Uh, for the production of 1 liter of the brewers required 5 liter to 10 liter of the water. And third one is the waste, that is the brewing yeast. After the completion of the fermentation process is yeast settled down. This yeast is used as a production of the baker yeast or as a production of the active dry yeast or inactive yeast or maybe as a compressed yeast. These are the main waste which are the generated in the brewing industry. What are the defects in the brewing system? First one is the oxidation due to the storage in a warm condition or the high temperature. The causes deterioration due to the oxidation process. Then turbidity defects due to the if containing higher percentage of the protein or the protein tannin complex substances or the starch in the final product. And last one is the defect which is the off flavor, which is the generated due to the poor ingredients or maybe brewer contact with the metals. These are the references used for the preparation of this PowerPoint presentation. In this video discussion, you learn how the beer management process is done, what are the major steps, and what are the processing parameters which are the control during the brewing fermentation process. Thank you very much. In the brewing,